Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
This morning, we'll be making our first stop at the Eurozone because the ECB has cut down rates after almost a year due to high inflation in the Europe, which has dropped. So the ECB has cut rates by 25 basis points. What will be the implication of that on the Eurozone? Let's find out this morning as we have our guest joining us virtually, Dr. Ajuwon. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me with you this morning.
Thank you for making time out for us. We need to let you know that Dr. Ajuwon is an economist, and so he will be speaking to the economic implications of the ECB cutting down rates in the Eurozone. For almost a year, the rate was kept at what it was, but just last week it was cut by 25 basis points. So it's around 4.25% now from 4.50% that it was before. Now, what do you think are the decisions, aside the inflation dropping a bit, that inflation rate dropping a bit, that had led the ECB to cutting down rates after leaving it at what it was for almost a year?
If you look at the genesis of what is happening, especially world over, it all started with the COVID problem, and what all the government of the world started doing is, to start pumping money into the economy because of the COVID, the production was shut down, and whether people are producing or not, people will still have to consume. And for people to consume, government have to, release all the resources at their disposal. And that led to too much money in the circulation. And the government cannot just withdraw that money, especially with regard to what happened, in the recent past that is still happening now. And that is the Ukraine and the Russia war and the Israel-Hamas war. So that has complicated a lot of things, and that's what is happening all over the world, affecting the distribution of goods. So it started with COVID, and now, it has led into a lot of complications. And so the output has not regained its normal directory, the growth pattern. And that is why we are having this inflation seriously affecting the world economy, all over. But when you see what the Central Bank of Europe has done, what this is, they have a better reign, better control of their monetary policy, and, they can see the situation of things, and they realize that it's now high time to start easing out, and that's why they removed that 25%, reducing the interest rate from 4.5 to 4.25. With that, by the time they look at the implication of that on the economy, that will inform the next decision whether, to reduce it further or to keep it at the level where it is, for now.
All right, Dr. Ajuwon, glad you have joined us on Early Exchange this morning. Good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, as an economist, we would like you to help our audience or our viewers to understand the economic implication of this decision by the ECB, to cut interest rates from 4% to 3.75%. What will be the economic implication of this for investors and those who want to engage in borrowing?
What the implication of that is this, with the reduction is from 4.5 to 4.25, not 3.75, if I understand what. But the implication of it is this, companies rely on borrowing, for investments, because there is nobody that can have enough capital for the investment needed in their corporation. Now, the higher the interest rate, the lower will be the level of investment, because definitely anything you want to invest in, and you realize that the interest you are going to make, the profit you are going to make, cannot cater for the interest of the loan you want to obtain, definitely you have to knock out the borrowing. That means you will not undertake that investment. And we know the level of investment in an economy will determine the output in that economy. We also determine the level of employment in that economy. So once the interest rate is rising, it is reducing the investment level. And by reducing the investment level, you are as well also reducing, the outputs of that economy. And once the output of the economy is reducing, automatically you're also reducing, the rate at which people are going to get job. So definitely it's going to affect employment as well as output. That is the implication of interest rates, to go about it in the layman's language.
So now that rates have been cut down by 25 basis points, what would be the likely benefits for the Eurozone?
So, like I said, the implication is that, all the investments that could have been taking place, when the interest rate was 4.5, but that people could not embark on, with the reduction in the interest rates now, it means, those people can now go ahead and borrow the money to do the investments that they would not have done.
If you observe the strategy being used by the Eurozone to tighten up the economy and controlling the inflation rate has been productive with the result of statistics being released. Now, compared to this climate in Africa, where the same strategy is being used, but you get different results, what do you think is more strategic about the decision by the Eurozone to tighten up the economy, and how can Africa benefit from this kind of template or approach to tackling inflation?
When you see what is happening, I told you that they have a better reign on their own economy. And it's not as if we don't have a better reign on our economy, but, in part of this world, we are deceiving ourselves a lot. And not until we start doing the right thing, I think, we can't be getting the results they are getting. For instance, when you look at the flow of money, the EFCC, the CBN, especially the CBN, they know how every currency is moving. But the point is, they will keep a blind eye to some movements. Once they know that they are paymasters, they will keep, a blind eye. And until, we start calling a spade, we cannot get the kind of results, they are getting. Because look at what has been happening. You will realize that since the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has become the president of Nigeria, and with the removal of the oil subsidy, although we know that the subsidy is still there, but that's not for me to say. But with the removal and the increase in the price of the petrol, as well as the exchange rate liberalization, a lot of money is now coming into the purse of the government. And you will be surprised that with all that huge money coming into the purse of the government that is being distributed to all the states, you will get to so many states and you won't see any effects. So you ask yourself, so what is actually happening to all the money that the state governments are getting? So you realize where the problem is. That is why, because the problem we're having in Nigeria is that there's too much money in circulation. But when you look at, the too much money, people are crying. And yet we are saying that there is too much money in circulation. So you ask yourself, is there too much money in circulation? But yes, there is too much money in circulation, but it's just flowing around some few people, especially the people in government and their cronies in the private sector. So those are the ones that are what's it called. And the CBN can see all these things. They know it, they see it. Because the movement of all currency, they can see it. They can monitor it, but they are not doing anything about it because it's their paymasters. So until we start telling ourselves the truth, we will not get the kind of results they are getting. But that we can't, we can. But we are just deceiving ourselves. That's why we are not getting the results that they are getting.
Talking about telling ourselves the truth, let's take a look at this. The Eurozone having an inflation rate of 2.4% as at April, and that dropped from 7% the previous year, talking about 2023, compared to Nigeria that has an inflation rate of 33.3%. For Nigeria, rate is being increased. The CBN tightens monetary policy to control inflation. Having an inflation rate of over 33%, rate is being tightened, and having an inflation rate of 2.4%, rate is being cut. What do you make of these two situations?
If you look at the Nigeria situation, you will see that, in fact, if people understand economics properly, and if there is another place where you can save your money, you are not even supposed to be saving money in the bank, because any interest they are giving you on your money is negative interest. You said it now that inflation is 33%. If you keep your money in bank, what rate are you going to get? You cannot get anything more than 10% or 15% at most. That is, in fact, you get a good investment opportunity. That's how you can get 15%. When banks are borrowing money, what was the rate that banks are borrowing money now? Knowing that the interest rate that the last time the CBN announced, I've forgotten the percentage, is it 22% or whatever? So, and the interest rate is 33. So if you look at that, you will see that in Nigeria, no commercial bank is supposed to be giving out any loan less than 50%. But if you are to go by that, you will realize that what's it called? The interest rate in Nigeria is actually negative, not positive. So people that are saving money in the bank, they are saving money in the bank because they cannot afford to be carrying cash all about, or because the safety and as well as to be able to make transactions. Otherwise, people are not supposed to be keeping money because you cannot get interest rate that is going to be a positive interest rate in Nigeria. And once interest rate is not positive and is negative, definitely we are scaring away people to invest. And when people are not invest, the people that wants to borrow, what I mean by invest is we are dissuading people to bring money into the Nigeria money market. And if that is the case, then you can't expect much borrowing. So what you see is, the excess liquidity, not people taking the opportunity of, trying to make interest from their funds. What they are doing is just keeping excess. So whatever banks are doing with that excess funds, is okay by them. So we are not being, what's it called, investment focused in this country. And until we start doing the appropriate thing, we'll just continue to be chasing shadows.
All right. Looking at this from the economic management angle, now the Bretton Woods institutions such as IMF have often advised that rates be tightened to control inflation. But look at this. Like I said, an inflation rate of 33%. Now, rate has been increased. The CBN at the last MPC meeting increased rate from 24.75% to 26.25%. Here you have the Eurozone having an inflation rate of 2.4%, yet they are cutting rate from 4.50% to 4.25%. What is the rationale behind the advice to increase rates in a place like Nigeria, or in a country like Nigeria that has an inflation rate of 33%? And what should be the response of the economic management team, which I want to, in this case, look at the CBN, to this kind of advice, looking at the inflation rate and what should be the step to do?
When you look at the genesis of inflation. There are so many things that causes inflation, but in this part of the world, what is causing our inflation is that we are not all that productive. We are only interested in consuming, and once you are not producing and you are consuming, what we are witnessing now is what we'll be witnessing. So that is why there is high level of inflation in these parts of the world. When you are look at what we are importing in this country, fix what we are exporting. We have crude oil. We are not even refining it, only for us to be importing refined oil. So even in areas where we have advantage, we are not even exploring that advantage. And there are a lot of things that are attached to it. And the moment we continue to be importing without corresponding, exports, to cover for that import, the naira will continue to lose value. And once naira is losing value, things will continue to become more expensive, since most of the things we are consuming are being imported. Look at the issue of food inflation. The food inflation in this country now is more than 40%. So you ask yourself, what's causing that? Most of the things we are consuming, especially in food, is coming from the northern part of the country. And to transport those things from the north down here, one, we know so many things affecting it. Number one is the issue of insecurity. And number two is the price of diesel now, because all these big vehicles use diesel. And we know the price of diesel in the market now. Diesel is more than 1,500 naira per liter. So, and definitely they have to inculcate the transportation price in the what's it called, in the commodity, so that by the time it's getting to this part of the country, it is now more expensive. Then another problem that is now causing food inflation in the country is that with the exchange rates now, all the neighboring countries around us now find buying things from Nigeria far, far cheap than the way it was before. So they are now the one enjoying the little agricultural output that we are producing, at a very cheap price, while we have to now be paying expensively for it. That is an unintended consequence of this exchange rate liberalization. So that is what is now worsening the food, the food problem in the country, leading to over 40% inflation, because it's business. If I have something to sell and somebody is ready to pay me, let's say 35 naira, and before I was selling it 30 naira, so definitely I will take it to where I can collect 35,000 naira. If you people around knows you want to, then you should be ready to pay that 35,000 naira. If you're not, then I would rather be taking all my product outside the country. And that is what is happening now, and leading to high level of inflation. So until I don't know how government can do that, because government cannot come out and say, okay, we are banning exportation. How will they do it? We don't have borders and all those things. So definitely, people can take things across. And especially, when you look at the neighboring countries, we are in the same zone. Cameroon, that belongs to Central Africa, we can say, okay, that one is not. But there is free movement between Nigeria and Cameroon. So all our things are just getting across to the border, while we in Nigeria, we are just suffering the consequence. So that is the issue. Now, coming back to the issue of money, if you look at the way things are now, so much money is outside the banking sector. And if you look at it, it is a problem that has been created by the last government of Buhari. And it's not something that can be solved in a short time. It will take a long time. So what is happening now is mopping up all the excess liquidity in the economy. And believe me sincerely, I think the CBN is doing as much as they can do, but we are not being sincere with ourselves. Because if you are being sincere, then they will trace the money to where it is and get it out. When you look at the people in government these days, you will see that we are deceiving ourselves. That's why all of them can be taking their children abroad to go and school and all those things. They are the one creating problem in Nigeria. And until those things is, we are saying that we are not exporting, and everybody needs hard currency to pay for their children's school fees and all those things abroad. So where do you think Nigeria will get the money? It is the little thing we are exporting and remittances that are coming in. That is what's it called. So there is no way Naira will not continue to be losing value. What the CBN is doing is just to shock it as much as they can. But as it is, I tell you, until we start telling ourselves the truth, the situation of things in the country might not improve.
All right, Dr. Ajuwon, let's look at the target for the Eurozone when it comes to inflation. The target is to ensure that they bring it further down to 2%. I put this to you. How soon do you think this target can be realized, and what should be done to ensure that this is achieved as set by the ECB?
The policy they are practicing at ECB is inflation targeting, and the target is 2%. And when you see what the inflation is there is plus or minus 1%. So where it is now to them is the appropriate place that the inflation is supposed to be. They are targeting 2% inflation, and the inflation is around 2.6 something. So to them, the inflation level is already at the appropriate level it's supposed to be. So what they are interested in doing now is to grow the economy, to ensure that the output increases as well as employment. On the level of inflation, I think they're already achieving the set targets. So whether the inflation is going to reduce further is not really a target they are facing now. What they're actually facing now is how to increase output as well as increase employment. So for the inflation, definitely we know that once the output start flowing, once the output starts increasing and people getting employment, then inflation will fall further. But as of now, they are interested in growing their economy. They're already meeting the target of the inflation they set for themselves.
There's a lesson to learn here for countries that are battling very high inflation rates and having slow economies.
You see, with Nigeria, it is a double tragedy that we are having high inflation and at the same time, we are having low, what's it called? So you see, the one to face out of the two depends on the one that is the bigger enemy. And I think for now in Nigeria, the bigger enemy is inflation. So you need to, because the policy to use is always, in favor of one. And for now, once the level of inflation is so high, like we are having in Nigeria, I think it's better to, face inflation, to bring it down to a reasonable level before you can start facing that. But definitely, in the long run, whatever policy you are using, we achieve both targets. But in the short run, you look at which one is the most appropriate target that you should try to accomplish in the short run. For a country like Nigeria, where we have high level of inflation, I think, it is appropriate to first face inflation. That does not mean that, we'll leave the outputs unattended to, but it's better to crash the inflation as much as possible. Because without, having a rein on the level of inflation, there is no way there can be investment. And once there is no investment, there cannot be increase in the output because, the economy rely on, investment to increase output. So inflation is the bigger enemy in the country now, which, have to be faced squarely to ensure that, you put a rein on it.
If we look at the statistics at the moment as regards the Eurozone, it seems all is well in many fronts. But there are some experts who have argued that it's not time to celebrate. As an economist or an expert in this area, what's your opinion on this?
You see, people can be saying whatever they like, but the truth is this. I will say that, you know, the Europe economy is doing, beautifully well. And I think why, you might be sounding that it's not yet time to rejoice because of so many things around happening. I told you, it's not just about a country's economy. We are now operating, a sort of web. So anything that is affecting one part has a way of, having impact on all the economy in the world. So all the wars going on, especially what is happening in this part of the world, is in a way also affecting, all the economy of the world. So if some are saying that Europe should not celebrate now, that might be the reason why they are saying so. But I would say that, they are managing the economy well, and what is happening now is appropriate and that should be happening. But what will happen in the near future depends on not only what is happening in the euro economy, but what is also happening around. And, it has a way of affecting and bringing all the plans they put in place and bringing it to zero. But for now, I will say that it calls for celebration for what they've been able to achieve. But for what will happen thereafter, it depends on so many factors, that they might not even have any control over it.
Still on lessons that countries can learn, let's turn to the U.S., which the Fed has refused to cut down rate, but chosen to hold it steady at about 5.25% to 5.5%. They are having an inflation rate of about 3.4%. What is the difference between these two zones, the Eurozone and the U.S.? And why do you think, in the case of the U.S., the Fed is reluctant to cut rates at this point?
If you look at it, the rate of inflation in America is high, but I'm sure if that is what is happening in Nigeria, we'll be rejoicing that we're having 3 point something% inflation. We'll be rejoicing. But the truth is this: the two economy is a different economy. One, U.S. is about to face an election. And, we all know that towards election, a lot of money is being pumped into the economy. So, and because of that, there is no way, U.S. can lower their interest rate for now. That's number one reason. Then number two reason is what is the inflation targeting of the U.S.? Once they are not meeting their inflation targeting, they cannot, be lowering their interest rates. So they are not under the same dispensation, and so definitely you cannot expect. I will not argue in favor of US lowering their interest rate for now, mainly because they are about to face a major election, and we can see campaign is going on and a lot of funds is entering into the economy. So to now lower the interest rates now, it's like, you are calling for a problem.
We left off at the point where we're talking about inflation targeting. Now let's bring this home. Sometime in 2013, the Central Bank of Nigeria had as its target to bring down inflation to between 6 to 9%. But given current realities in 2024, the new Central Bank Governor, Oluseye Ajuwon, gave a new target of about 21.4%. Could you make some recommendations of how the CBN can achieve this target, given what the European Central Bank has done with reducing inflation and arriving almost at their target of 2%?
Yeah, like I said, we are still not facing reality in Nigeria, to be precise. We all know the genesis of what is happening now, and the people in government managing our economy are not doing a beautiful job at all, um, especially under the previous government, but it's really, really bad uh, with the last dispensation. Emefiele was a mistake that should not have happened to Nigeria. He actually, did a lot of evil to this economy, and that's part of what we are witnessing now. And like I said, we cannot take away, COVID-19 impact, as well as the Ukraine war and the Israel Hamas war. That really has worsened things. But when you look at it, it depends on how how you have laid your bed, how you are operating the economy. That any little shock from the outside, we just destroyed everything on ground. When you look at the ways and means under President Buhari, where it was before Buhari became president and where they left it when they were leaving, then you understand why, it is very difficult for us, to have rein on our inflation. Uh, if I may remember well, the ways and means before President Buhari came to government was around 3 trillion, and they took it to, so the debt, let me just say the debt before President Buhari was the president was less than 10 trillion. Now it's almost, when he was leaving, it was around 88 trillion. So within 8 years, they added more than 70 trillion, to the debt in the country. So, and when you look at the economy, you ask yourself, that's 70 over 70 trillion. Where is it? Where can you see what government have done, to cater for this high debt that you are now having on us? So you now understand why, we have high level of inflation. If more than 70 trillion debt was added to the economy under 8 years, then, and you can't see any justifiable reason for that, then you understand why our level of inflation is so high. Then, when you now come back into the economy and look at the people themselves and the way we are managing the economy, we both the leaders and the followers are not, making the situation any better, because the little investment that you might decide to come and invest in Nigeria, those that are supposed to be in charge of it are ready to, destroy everything within the shortest time period. So with your monitoring everything, it's crazy out there. It's crazy out there. And you will see, when you look at Dangote and you see who are the MD or CEO of all their investments, you won't see Nigerians there. Why? Because once you put them there, it's how they are going to steal and steal until the company, goes into liquidation or even into debt. So those are the ways by which even the followers are not making anything, better. And until we understand that it is evil that we are doing to ourselves, that this will not lead to any meaningful development and change our ways, what is happening is what will continue to be happening. And it's so sad because you will see so many people that are genuine and all those things, but they cannot get job. Why? Because the people that are managing the establishment companies we have in the country are not doing a good job with it. And therefore, instead of them increasing output, employing more people, they are doing evil, to destroy the company. come, in all sectors, agricultural sector, you will see if you have chicken, the people that you say should be the security are the one that will be stealing the eggs, the chicken, and all those things. So how will you make ends meet? So at the end of the day, we are discouraging investment in this country. And at the end, we will now turn to government and be saying government is not, providing job, and as if that's part of the government duty. I'm always saying it, the government duty is to provide an enabling environment. Government is not supposed to be the major employer of labor in the economy. It's supposed to be the private sector. But in this country, in this part of the world, it's an anomaly. When you start saying government is not creating jobs, it is not the duty of government to create jobs. It's the duty of government to ensure that, business will thrive, and let those business be the one, providing job for people. If we are not making business environment conducive, then there's no way business will be able to operate optimally. And once businesses are not operating optimally, then the problem we are having is what we'll be having. Because once we are not having output enough, then where do you want to get the difference, the shortfall? So that's the issue in Nigeria. What we are producing is far, far less than what we are consuming. The government are not making it in any way better, because they are the one that has the resources under their control. And what they are doing is they continue living large, feeding fat, and expect, the masses to understand or whatever, as if they are blind. They cannot see what is happening. Look at what is happening now. All the people in the legislature, they bought themselves SUV. So how will you tell people that we don't have foreign exchange when all the senators and the House of Rep could bought, over 160 million naira car for a contract of 4 years? You now tell us there's no money. So how will you explain that to the common man, that there is no money? They just increased the salary of judges now by 300%. Now to increase the salary of civil servants by 300%, they said there is no money, it's going to lead to inflation. How will you explain that to the masses, that there is no money, when they can see you living large, gallivanting all over the world, spending the resources that are supposed to be for all of us, the little view in government, and living large, and they expect the masses to understand? It's not possible. So if you have to lead, you lead by example. You can't say there is no money when you are feeding fat. So how can you tell people that there's no money when you are feeding fat? If there's no money, we will see it in you that truly there's no money. But if you cannot see it in you that there's no money, then there's no way masses will understand that there's no money. So that's the problem that is happening in the country now. So there is no way they can tell people there's no money when you are feeding fat.
All right, interesting. Now, what would you expect? Like some other countries like Canada, Switzerland, and even Sweden are also cutting rates just like what ECB is doing. Now, what would you expect in coming months? Would you expect the European Central Bank to maintain the rate or cut it further low so that to achieve the target being set? As an economist, I want you to do a forecast here.
I told you, I can't forecast. It depends on what will happen in the next 1 or 2 months. In fact, not 1 or 2 months. What will happen in the next 1 month will determine, whether they are going to maintain, whether they are going to increase, or whether they are going to decrease. And let me explain by what I mean by that. If they realize that, you can see that immediately they call the interest rates. You can see that inflation has started reducing. So if it maintains that trajectory, then definitely I can bet it with you that the next time they are meeting, they are going to cut the interest rate further. But if for any reason there is increase in inflation, then they might not have to maintain. But for now, I don't think there will be any need for them to increase the interest rate. But whether they will maintain or decrease is what we should be talking about. If all things being equal, no, no COVID, no whatever. So what can happen is for them to maintain or to decrease the interest rate. And I told you what will determine that is what will happen in the next 1 month. So if the next 1 month they realize that, oh, output is rising, and they might now decrease the interest rate further. So it's not something that anybody can forecast now to say, oh, this is what will happen next. But I can only say that from now forward, what is most likely going to happen is either to maintain or to decrease it further.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ajuwon, for being with us on Early Exchange this morning.
Thank God.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.